Welcome to the podcast. This is the Make It Happen podcast. This is our very, very first episode. For those of you who know me, my name is Darren Hatch. I'm here with my co-host, my business partner, my brother-in-law, my cuñado, as we say it in Spanish, Mike Stevinger.
Thanks.
So we're excited to do this podcast. This is something we've talked about doing for a long time, right?
Yes, sir. Long time.
We're definitely going to suck for a while, so just bear with us for a bit. But
We got to knock these out so we can knock the dust off.
yeah, so we're excited about doing this podcast. Both of us really enjoy listening to podcasts. We enjoy learning from others. We think it's awesome when people bring on guests and stuff like that, and be able to kind of hear, their side of things and how they view things, the experience they have, and so forth. And so we're excited about this podcast. Hopefully you guys can get a lot out of it. We're calling it the Make It Happen podcast. There's a little bit of background to this, but Mike and I, as we were thinking about what to name this podcast, we were both kind of jotting down things as we were contemplating this idea. And I had a bunch of things written down, and one day I woke up ready to go to the gym, and I have this reminder that pops up on my phone, and it like 6 a.m, it pops up and it says "Make It Happen." And there's a little bit of backstory to that, but years ago, when I was working on one of our real estate projects that Mike and I do together, I had been extremely frustrated that it had taken like years.
Yeah, like 5-6 years.
Yeah, and I was like, this was probably 2 years into it, 2 or 3 years into it, and I kept getting frustrated because I kept getting shut down, and I couldn't figure out how to do this real estate project. And so one day I was at home just extremely frustrated, and so I set this reminder in my phone to just say, make it happen.
Yeah.
Like, do everything you need to do to be able to make it happen. Yeah. And so it's kind of something that has always been a reminder on my phone every day. It pops up when I wake up in the morning just to make crap happen. Like, just do whatever it takes to make it happen. So that's why I had this reminder in my phone, and I've kind of lived by it. In fact, probably about 6 months ago, before we even decided to do the podcast, I had updated the screensaver on my phone to say "Make It Happen." And so as I was looking through, thinking through these ideas of what to name this podcast, as we were talking about it, that one, my reminder popped up, and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So then I added it to the list, and then we sat down to talk about what to call the podcast.
Right.
And I shared that with you, right? And what was it about? Because you were right away like...
Oh, yeah. It definitely resonated with me as well, mostly because of just, my past life and everything else, and what ends up happening, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I don't know everything.
Neither am I.
But the one thing that I feel like is a strength maybe is that I just figure crap out. I just make things happen, and it might not be the traditional way of doing it. It might not even be the right way sometimes, right? But it gets done, and I make it happen, even when it doesn't want to be made to happen. It just figure it out, push through.
And I can vouch for you on this. Mike is the guy, especially in our family, like we always joke about my dad. We always joke about how anytime he needs something done, he calls this guy right here. And so Mike, I can vouch for him. There's no better person to call when you want something done than Mike. I mean, and everybody knows that. You're humble about it, but it's the truth.
Cool.
And so I can vouch for him on that matter, and that's what I think it works really well. I probably don't get things done as well as you do, so our partnership works in business because anything we really need something done, we just call Mike up. He'll take care of it, right?
Wow, that's funny.
But it's true. I think that's something that really is a part of who you are. I think it's a part of who I am. I think that's why we've had some success in the entrepreneurship world.
Absolutely.
Because and I don't know if you'll remember this, but I remember this clearly. I remember it was probably a year or two ago. You and I were at a conference where Tony Robbins was talking.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And he said something that really resonated with me, and we talked about it when we were at that conference. And he said, people think they fail due to a lack of resources, but they fail due to a lack of resourcefulness.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I think that kind of embodies the whole concept of make it happen. It's too many people use that as a crutch or as an excuse that there's a reason why they can't make something happen or they can't succeed in business or just life in general, whether it be fitness, health, whatever. They make excuses like, oh, well, I don't have that, and so that's why I can't do that. Well, guess what?
Right.
the people that have that mentality and people that think, well, I can't do it because I don't have the resources. I wasn't born into money, or I wasn't born with these talents and skills. It's like, no,
Right.
get resourceful. Go out there and learn that from somebody, or find the resources that you need to make whatever your dream is happen, right?
Absolutely.
So that's always been something for me from that conference that really, I think it's just an important thing to remember in life, whether that be entrepreneurship, fitness, health, just anything you want to accomplish in your life is like, don't use that as a crutch. Make sure you're being resourceful and just get out there and make it happen.
Right. One of the things that I've always loved about this quote about from Winston Churchill is actually success is failure after failure without losing enthusiasm. And I think for me, that's what kind of make it happen means. It's you know what? So what? You fell down. Just get up and make it happen, and have some enthusiasm, get after it. And because I failed a ton, but it's that getting up again and moving forward and being excited and just saying, you know what, I'm going to make this happen. Whether I've failed in the past or not, I'm going to move forward. And so that's why I think it resonated for me so well as well.
Yeah, I think especially because on this podcast, we're going to talk a lot about entrepreneurship, business, investing. I think, one of the things that I've always viewed entrepreneurship is like, it's a journey, right? And so many people are scared to start one business and it's going to fail. And then that was like, that's it. Like, life's over, right? No, it's like, no. Like, if you're really dedicated to being an entrepreneur, like, so what if one thing fails? So what if two things fail? So what if 10 things fail?
Right.
If eventually you find that thing that brings you that success that you're looking for, right? And so it's like, you can't just give up. You need to know when it's time to move on to something else, but you got to make things happen. You at least need to get to that point where you can start to see those results in any aspect of life. And so, with this podcast, that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about is entrepreneurship, business, investing, lots of different things, but primarily in those spaces, right? Just, how to really make things happen. We're going to, I think the reason is kind of selfish for us of starting this podcast, because we love to learn and we really want to bring on guests that we can learn from.
Absolutely.
And not only we want to be able to share that with you all so that you all can learn too, but at the same time, we really just are kind of doing it for ourselves, because that's the best way to learn something new or to get the experiences is finding somebody and hearing their journey and having them being able to pick their brain, right? I love to sit there and talk to people that have I know you do too, extensive amount of knowledge in a certain area and be like, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? So that's part of what we're want to accomplish with this podcast is being able to bring those guests on so we can learn from them, but at the same time, so you guys can learn from them, the listeners. Yeah. And I think we have a lot of cool people that we have in mind.
Absolutely.
that we want to bring on.
I think this may sound a little bit crazy, but when I think of learning from others, in my mind, it's almost like having a time machine, because I get to like leap forward in my journey, my entrepreneurship journey. I get to learn from them, their expertise, and literally jump months or even years of what it would take me to find out that knowledge, and having these, not just the conversations, but the relationships. I think, when Darren says, this is a little bit selfish, it is, because we're trying to build these relationships, not just the knowledge base, but now we have these friends. When we're done with a podcast, we hope they become friends and we learn from them, and then we've built a relationship with them that will be a long-term partnership.
Yeah, like a while back, I've joined lots of masterminds, and we've been involved with lots of different kind of mentors and stuff. And actually, one of them, his name is Bridger Pennington, and in his mastermind, and hopefully we'll be able to get him on the podcast someday. But he talked about how one of the best networking tools there is a podcast.
Yeah.
Because you bring people on, you get to know them, you form that relationship, you provide value for them by exposing them to your follower base or your social media following, and then you have an ongoing relationship with them that you can develop, do business with and stuff. And so, this podcast has lots of purposes for us. Part of it is for the listeners to be able to learn from, but part of it is for us to be able to learn with and network as well. So if any of you are listening and you do have an interest in coming on our podcast, send us a DM. We'd love to have people that have extensive knowledge in certain areas, and it can be lots of different areas, have them here on the podcast, right? So that's kind of what the point is. That's kind of the topics that we'll be covering here on the podcast, and so we're really excited. This is the first episode. We were planning on putting quite a few out. If you guys follow me on social media, you know, that'll kind of keep you in the loop on when we put these new episodes out.
Right.
We're going to plan on putting them on Apple and Spotify, and also the full episodes in video, like we're recording here on YouTube. And so, you know, you can watch them in any of those places, and we're excited to get this podcast going, and hopefully be able to provide some interesting content for all the listeners, and obviously for ourselves as well. So make sure to subscribe, follow us, keep it in the loop on social media, and we'll let you know when we have these episodes coming out.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I can predict the first comment. They say that a camera adds 10 pounds. So, Mike, how many cameras are actually on you? I get it.
That's Mike's sense of humor. So thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys on the next podcast.